So this is the tale of Sonic.exe. For you, gaming is about escape. You push buttons. You push the button on an arcade, on a console. To switch the PC on, you are switching the real world off and escaping to somewhere else for a while. Recently, the bright primary colors and flat backgrounds of retro games have been your escape, possibly. Sure, the graphics are virtually primitive. And the plinky plonk music can be irritating sometimes, but there's something about the simplicity, the fullness of the characters, the amazing gameplay of those retro games that really appeals to you. Until, that is, one of those games, full of bright, sunshiny days, suddenly turns dark. Until one of your favorite characters fills the screen, but instead of offering his usual wide smile and mischievous eyes, instead he offers you emptiness, terror, and that dark, hollow void of the empty sockets that leak some awful fluid. The music fades, and the eyeless face glares out at you. And that is when you realize it is far too late. You're in his world now. This, again, is the tale of the corrupted file of Sonic.exe. So, the writer of this totally true tale is a total Sonic the Hedgehog fan, much like everyone else was. And telling his tale, I'll be reading it from his perspective. I like the newer games. Sure, I don't mind playing the classics. I don't think I've ever played glitchy or hacked games before, though I don't think I want to play any games after the experience that I had. It started on a nice summer afternoon. I was playing Sonic Unleashed. I liked how you get to explore the towns in it, until I noticed, out of my peripheral vision, that the mailman had arrived and put something in my mailbox, and as usual, and left. I paused my game to see what I got in the mail. The only thing in the mailbox, though, was a CD case for computers and a note, so I took a look inside. I looked at the note first and realized it was from my dear friend Kyle. Let's just call him that anyway. Whom I hadn't heard from in 2 weeks. I know that because I recognize his handwriting, though it was weird how it looked. It looked badly written, though there was also something weird in how it looked. It looked scratchy and somewhat difficult to read, as if Kyle was having a hard time writing it down and did it in a hurry. This is what he wrote. Tom, I can't take it anymore. I have to get rid of this thing somehow before it was too late. And I was hoping you'd do it for me. I can't do it. He's after me. If you don't destroy the CD, he'll come after you too. He's too fast for me. Please, Tom. Destroy this godforsaken disc before he comes after you too. It's too late for me. Destroy the disc and you'll destroy him. But do it quick. Otherwise he'll catch you. Don't even play the game. It's what he wants. Just destroy it. Please. Kyle. Well, that was certainly weird. Even though Kyle is my best friend and I haven't seen him in 2 weeks, I didn't do what he asked me. I didn't think that a simple gaming disc would do anything bad to him. After all, it's just a game, right? Boy, was I wrong about that. Anyway, I looked at the disc and it looked like any ordinary CDR. Except it had black marker written on it that just said Sonic.exe. And it was very much unlike Kyle's handwriting, meaning he must have gotten it from someone else, like a pawn shop or off eBay. When I saw Sonic written on the game, I was actually really excited and wanted to play it since I'm a big Sonic fan. I went up to my room, turned on my computer, put the disc in, installed the game, and when the title screen popped up, I noticed it was the first Sonic game. I was like, awesome, because like I said earlier, I like the classics. The first thing I noticed that was out of place when I started was there was a split second when I saw the title image turn into something much different, something I now consider horrifying, before cutting to black. I remember what the image looked like in that split second before the screen cut to black. The skies darkened, the title emblem had rusted and ruined. The Sega 1991 now said Sega 666, and the water turned red like blood, except it looked hyper-realistic unlike the rest of the game. But the freakiest thing was in that split-second frame, Sonic. It was Sonic. His eyes were pitch black and bleeding with two glowing red dots staring right at me. And his smile was much wider, stretched wider up to the edge of his face than it ever is. I was rather disturbed about that image when I saw it, though I figured it was just a glitch and forgot about it. After it cut to black, it stayed like that for about 10 seconds or so. And then another weird thing happened. The save file select from Sonic Adventure 3 or Sonic the Hedgehog 3 popped up. And I was like, WTF? What's this doing in the first Sonic game? Anyway, then I noticed another thing off. The background was dark, cloudy sky of Bad Stardust Speedway level from Sonic CD. And there were only 3 save files. The music was that creepy Caverns of Winter music from Earthbound. Only it was extended, and it seemed to have been in reverse. The image for the save file where you see a preview of the level you're on was just static, red static, for all 3 files. What freaked me out more was the character select. It only showed Tails, Knuckles, and to my surprise, Dr. Robotnik. Breaking character for just a second. That's the thing that freaks him out more. But I digress. Tom is a young man, and this is his tale. Now, I was sure that something was up. I mean, how can you play Robotnik in a classic Sonic game, for crying out loud? And that's when I realized this wasn't a glitchy game. It was a hacked game. Yeah, it definitely looked hacked. It was really creepy. But as a smart gamer, I wasn't scared. Or at least I tried not to be. I told myself that it was just a hacked game and there's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, shaking off that creeped out feeling, I just picked file 1, chose Tails, and selected and got started. But the game froze after about 5 seconds. And then I heard a creepy pixelated laugh that sounded an awful lot like that Kefka guy from Final Fantasy before it cut to black again. The screen stayed black this time for about 10 more seconds, and it showed the typical level thing, except the simplistic shapes were different shades of red, and the text file showed only Hill, Act 1. The scene faded in and out and in. The title vanished, revealing Tails in Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1. The music was different, though. It sounded like a peaceful medley in reverse. Anyway, I started playing and the tails started running like you would in any of the classic Sonic games. What was odd about it was that Tails was running along the level, but there was nothing but flat ground and a few trees for like 5 minutes. That was when the peaceful music started to lower down into slow, deep tones, very slowly as I kept going. I suddenly saw something, and I stopped to see what it was. It was one of the small animals lying dead on the ground bleeding. That was when the music started to slow. Tails had a shocked and saddened look on his face that I've never seen him have before. So I had to move along, and he kept that worried look on his face. As he kept moving, I saw more dead animals as Tails moved past them, looking more and more worried as the music lowers and he moves past more dead animals. I was shocked to see how they all died. They looked like somebody killed them in a rather gruesome way. A squirrel was hanged on a tree with what appeared to be his entrails hanging out. A bunny had all 4 of his limbs torn off. A duck, eyes gouged out, throat slit. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw the massacre, and apparently so did Tails. After a few more seconds, there were no more animals, and the music seemed to have stopped. I still kept Tails to continue. I still pushed Tails to continue. After a moment passed, after the music stopped, Tails was running up a hill, and then he stopped. It wasn't until I saw why. Sonic was there on the other side of the screen, with his back against Tails, with his eyes closed. Tails looked happy to see Sonic. Then his smile faltered. Suddenly I noticed that Sonic wasn't responding to him. If not acting as if he totally was oblivious to Tails' presence, Tails walked slowly towards Sonic. And I noticed that I wasn't even moving my keyboard to make him move anymore. So this had to have been a cutscene that was added. Suddenly, I began to have a growing feel of dread as Tails walked closer to Sonic to get his attention. I felt that Tails was in danger, that something bad was going to happen. I heard faint static growing louder as Tails was inches away from Sonic and stopped and stretched his hand out to touch him. That foreboding feeling in my gut was growing stronger, and I felt the urge to tell Tails to get away from Sonic as that static grew louder. Suddenly, in a split second, I saw Sonic's eyes open, and they were black with those red dots, just like the title image was. Though there wasn't a smile. When that happened, the screen turned black, and the static sound was off. It stayed black for about another 7 seconds, and then white text appeared, forming a message, saying, "Hello. Do you want to play with me?" At this point, I was creeped out. I didn't want to continue with this game, but my curiosity got the better of me. So when I was taken to a different level, the level's title now just said, "Hide and Seek." This time, I was in the Angel Island level from Sonic 3, and it looked like everything was on fire. Tails looked as though he was scared out of his wits this time. He actually looked at me and made frantic gestures to me as if he wanted to get out of the area that he was in as fast as possible. I was starting to get freaked out by this. I mean, Tails was actually breaking the 4th wall and trying to tell me to get him out of there. So I pressed down on the arrow key as hard as I could, made him run as fast as he could. The pixelated version of that creepy theme when you meet Shadow at the Ark as Robotnik from Sonic Adventure 2 was playing as I made Tails trek through this desolated forest, trying to help him escape from whatever he was trying to run from. Suddenly, I heard that creepy laugh again. That awful Kafka-esque laugh. Right after 10 seconds having passed, as I helped Tails run through this forest, and then I started seeing flashes of Sonic popping everywhere on the screen. Again, with those black and red eyes. The music changed to a suspenseful, drowning jingle as I see Sonic behind Tails slowly gaining on him, flying. Sonic wasn't running, he was actually flying. The flying pose his sprite was making looked similar to Metal Sonic's flying pose in Sonic CD, except it was just Sonic, and his eyes were red and black eyes again, only this time, he had the most deranged looking grin on his face. He looked as though he was enjoying the torment he was giving the poor little fox friend as he gained up on him. Suddenly, when Tails tripped, another cutscene I could do nothing about. The music stopped, and Sonic vanished. Tails laid there and started crying for about 15 seconds. The scene was rather upsetting to watch, and I kind of teared up myself. But then Sonic appeared right in front of Tails, and Tails looked up in horror. Blood started to come from those blackened eyes of Sonic's as a grin slowly grew from his face as he looked at the horrified fox. I could do nothing but watch. And just in a split second, Sonic lunged at Tails right before the screen went black. There was a loud screeching noise that lasted only 5 seconds as well. The text returned, only this time it said, "You're too slow. Want to try again?" And that god-awful laugh came from it. I was so shocked by what happened. Did Sonic murder Tails? No, he couldn't have. He and Tails were supposed to be best friends, right? Why did Sonic do that to him? No. I shook off the shock as I brought myself back to the character select. The save file that had Tails was different. Tails was no longer in the box itself, but in the TV screen itself, which was flickering with red static. Tails' expression scared me. His eyes were black and bleeding. His orange fur had gone black, and his expression of anguish on his face. Trying to ignore it, I picked Knuckles next. And the laugh came again. The scene cut to black and stayed there for about 10 seconds again. And this time the level title said, "You can't." I was really freaked out by now. I couldn't really tell if this was a glitch or a hack or some kind of sick, twisted joke or anything really, but despite my fear of what happened next, I kept playing. The next level looked so much different. It had the ground of the scrap brain zone, but the sky background looked like the main menu. It was this dark, reddish, cloudy sky, but the music this time creeped me out the most. Sounded like Gygas's theme right after you beat Pokey in Earthbound. I also noticed that Knuckles looked a little unnerved as well. He looked afraid, just like Tails did. Just not quite as much. Still strange for Knuckles. He broke the fourth wall, just like Tails, and looked as if he wasn't sure about going on, but I made him move anyway. What else was I to do? He ran straight down the path of this dark level, and as he did, the screen started to flicker red static a couple times, and then that maddening laugh came again. Then, after a few seconds of running, I noticed several bloodstains on the metallic ground. I felt a growing sense of fear again, thinking something was going to happen to Knuckles. Something horrible. He looked nauseated walking down this blood-stained road, but still, I kept him going. I kept him going. Suddenly, as Knuckles ran, Sonic appeared right in front of him with those black and red eyes. Red static appeared again. When the static vanished, showing nothing but a black screen with the text saying, "Found you." Now I was scared. Sonic found Knuckles already? What was going on? Anyway, red static came again, and then I was back in the level. Knuckles looked like he was panicking. Sonic was nowhere to be found. And this time that high-pitched squealing from Silent Hill 1's final boss was playing. Was this some kind of boss battle with Sonic? God, I hoped it wasn't, honestly. Suddenly, Sonic appeared right behind Knuckles, in what appeared to be pixelated black smoke. I made Knuckles turn and punch Sonic, but Sonic vanished in black pixelated smoke before I could even land the hit. That terrible laugh went off again. Sonic appeared to be behind Knuckles again, and I made him punch at him again, but Sonic vanished, laughing once more. Knuckles was panicking even more each time, and even I felt like I was going crazy. Sonic was practically playing with us. He was playing a sick, twisted little mind game with me and Knuckles. Another cutscene played as Knuckles fell to his knees and clutched his head, sobbing. I felt his agony. Sonic was actually driving us both crazy. And then, in a split second, Sonic lunged at Knuckles. The screen went black, with another distorted screech of noise that lasted only 3 seconds. Another text appeared. So many souls played with, so little time. Would you agree? So many souls to play with, so little time. What the hell was going on? I started to think that Sonic was actually trying to talk to me through the game, but I was too scared to think that for real. I was brought back to the main menu, and this time, the second file box had Knuckles in the TV screen. His red fur had darkened to a reddish gray. His locks were dripping with blood. His eyes were black and bleeding now too. But the sadness on his face. He had the saddest look on his face. I began to think that those were the actual characters trapped in those TV screens on the save files. But I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. So I shut off the game and I took a break. I took a nap. I wish I hadn't. Because then I began to have the most disturbing nightmare. I was in pitch black darkness, though I was under the light given off by a lamp that hung high above my head. I could hear the cries of Knuckles and Tails nearby. They were saying stuff like, "Help us," and "Why did you give us to him?" and "Run away before he gets you, too." Their cries died out as I heard Sonic laugh again. His laugh. His distorted, Kefka-esque laugh. You're a lot of fun to play with, kid. Just like your friend Kyle was. Though he didn't last too long. I was scared, looking around for the source of the voice. It won't be long now until you join him and all my other friends. I saw him walking towards me, though, flickering in and out in several directions. You can't run, kid. You're in my world now. Just like the others. When he grabbed me and I saw his bleeding, red and black-eyed, grinning face, I woke up in fright. After a couple hours, I decided to continue playing the game. I don't know why, but I had to. I had to figure out what was happening. So I turned on the computer, turned on the game, and I selected Robotnik next. I thought it was wacky playing as Robotnik, but then the title screen appeared again, and this time it just said ... only an ellipse, which I found really freaky, honestly. This time, I was in some kind of hallway, I think. It didn't really look like it was from any of the classic Sonic games either. It was a really pixelated style. The floor was shiny and checkered, and the walls were like a dark grayish purple with animated candlelight. There were a few dark bloodstains here and there, and there was a dark red curtain hanging above the top part of the screen. Every 12 or so seconds, that red curtain sways very slowly, but whenever you played the game, you could barely see it move. The music was oddly pleasant, the piano playing rather slow and sad yet peaceful song. I knew better. This song was the song that played in Hill Act 1, only this time it wasn't in reverse. Dr. Robotnik didn't look nervous like Tails and Knuckles did, but he did have a suspicious look on his face, as if he was just a little bit paranoid. He did a little animation when I just left him standing. He turns his head to the left and to the right, at least twice, and then shrugs at me, as if he has no idea where he was, what was going on, or what to do next. Even though I was scared out of my mind about what was going on, I had Robotnik continue forward. He did his usual running animation, you know, when you've beaten him at the end of a classic Sonic game and you chase him away, as we continued to run down this hall. Then I stopped and looked at a long flight of stairs leading downward, and I was nervous. Even Robotnik seemed unsure of himself now, though I pressed forwards, onward. I led Robotnik down the stairs. I noticed that the walls had gotten darker and more reddish. The red torches were now an eerie blue. Then we landed onto another hallway. This one was longer than the last one, or at least it felt like it. And then we headed down another flight of stairs. This one much longer. Took at least a full minute. And then I heard that horrid, Kafka-esque laugh again. And the music slowly faded until it was very quiet. And as the walls turned dark red and the torches had black flames now, Robotnik landed on the third hallway. I noticed him now looking really creeped out as well. He tried to hide it. I couldn't blame him, but I was scared too. Suddenly Sonic popped right in front of Robotnik in the same way he did Knuckles. And then the red static started. The red static lasted another 15 seconds, but it showed me the most unpleasant image. An image showed a hyper-realistic Sonic standing in the darkness, where you can only see his face, while his head and torso faded into the blackness. When I say hyper-realistic, I mean he looked so real you could actually see the lines in his blue fur, as if you could feel the fur if you touched the screen. His face. Oh God. My God, he had the most horrifying smile I've ever seen. And that's saying something considering the image that I saw at the start of the game. His eyes were wide and black, and once again crying blood, which also looked hyper-realistic. And there were two small glowing red dots in those black eyes staring right at me, as if staring into my mind. His grin was wide and demonic, and literally stretched to the sides of his face like a Cheshire cat, except Sonic had fangs. Very sharp fangs. Much like the werehog teeth, except more vicious looking, somewhat yellowish, and from the look of it, he had the stains of blood and small bits of flesh on his lips and on his fangs, as if he ate some animal. I stared at that gruesome image for a good 30 seconds, never taking my eyes off of it. I felt as if he was actually looking at me, actually smiling at me. That face, it only took 10 seconds to etch itself into my brain for good, and then the screen flickered with red static 3 times. And on the 3rd time, I heard the laugh again, except this time it sounded distorted, demonic even. It went back to the image again, except this time, there was text again, though it looked messed up. But it's pretty much one of the most horrifying things I looked at since I had this game. I am God, it said above Sonic. When I read that image while looking at Sonic, it hit me. Then I realized right then and there, this Sonic was a monster. Pure evil, sadistic, all-powerful, nightmarish, demented monster, and all of his victims, Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik, possibly Kyle, are just his little toys. And this game was a gateway to his chaotic, nightmarish world, and this very hell that his victims trapped him in. Suddenly, in an actual split second, I screamed as Sonic lunged at the screen, screeching loudly with his mouth wide to an unnatural length, revealing nothing but a literally spiraling abyss of pure darkness before red static came again, this time much louder and more distorted, so loud that it hurt my ears. I yelled. I grabbed my ears as the red static screeched, and then it stopped and showed nothing, just a black screen. I sat there staring at the black screen. One last text came up. Ready for round 2? Tom. Then the laugh, now sounding more clear as if Sonic was right behind me in real life, played 3 times. As I looked at that text in shock and confusion. And then I booted back into the main menu. The third save file was an image of Robotnik, the same as Tails and Knuckles, distorted, skin gray, mustache drooping and blackened, his glasses broken, blood coming from his eyes. It was a mere dead expression. I looked at Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik, and I cried a bit. I pitied them and the agony. Trapped forever in the game, trapped forever with that horrid hedgehog. I turned off the computer, and I never turned it back on no matter what I did. Tom, again, pitied them. Pitied the agony that they were going through. That Robotnik and Tails and Knuckles were trapped with that horrid hedgehog, and always will be. He looked at them, and he cried. He turned off the computer. Or went to, before the computer shut itself off. He couldn't turn on his computer again no matter what he did. His computer would not start. It would not work for him. He sat there for maybe 25 seconds, horrified by what had happened, unsure of what to do next. The Sonic game, that Sonic, was the very embodiment of evil. He could literally drag you to hell, I think. He tortures people who play his game in more ways than one. And when he gets bored, he drags you into the game. He drags you into his hell, where he can play with you always, as his toy, forever. I can't get the game out of my computer. I think it's stuck in there. But at least I managed to turn it back on now. I sat there again. 25 seconds. I heard a voice right behind me, like a whisper. Try to keep this interesting for me, Tom. I turned around to see where the voice came from, and what I saw made me scream. Sitting on my bed, staring right at me, was a Sonic plushie, smiling with bloodstains under its eyes. And that, my friends, is the last we ever heard of Tom. What a tale of caution. And a reminder to always listen to your friends. If somebody sends you something saying that it'll kill them, maybe just don't get curious about it. Don't toy with it anyway.